Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gil Rogers. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach and Business Development Manager for Chegg. Happy to have you joining us today. Just a quick background for those of you who are not familiar. Chegg is a enrollment marketing service that helps colleges and universities connect with students who are researching them across the web. You may also know us as Zinch. Our company Zinch was acquired about 3 years ago by Chegg as part of Chegg's expansion into becoming the leading connected global learning platform for students. So, as Chegg, we provide services for students everywhere from their high school search all the way to their end of their college experience finding internships and every stop in between. Academic support, e-textbooks, textbook rental, scholarship search, and college search. So we're very excited to be partnering with TWG Plus and James, the director of research. And I'm going to introduce James in a moment and I'll let him get us started. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get working here today. You'll notice on the GoToWebinar toolbar that should be on the right-hand side of your screen a questions box. If you have any questions during the session today, please feel free to type them in there, and we'll handle them towards the end of the presentation. We also have a Twitter hashtag that we've set up. Well, Twitter has set up in theory, and that's hashtag Cookbook. So if you have any thoughts that you want to share or any questions you want to ask, feel free to use that on your social channels if that's something you'd be interested in doing as well. This presentation today is the College Admissions Cookbook. We'll get into the background of it as well once James gets started. But James, I'm going to kick it over to you for your introduction and to help us get started on the presentation today.
Thanks, Gil. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Weinberg. I'm the Director of Research at TWG Plus. We are a higher education marketing firm that works with colleges and universities across the nation of all different types. We provide research and branding services, publications and student search, social media consultation, web-based solutions, really a full gamut of marketing solutions for colleges and universities. So we're going to talk to you a bit about the College Admissions Cookbook, and that makes me really hungry. Hopefully everyone can see that very tasty looking recipe. We did not prepare that for this presentation. That was a stock photo. A lot of studies in higher education marketing recently have focused on the channels that prospective students utilize during the college choice process. And although a lot of the online and digital channels are very glamorous, oftentimes those aren't utilized as much at step one. In fact, direct marketing, which is largely postal and email marketing, is alive and well and extremely prominent in the college choice process. In fact, it is the #1 channel utilized by prospects by and large. Emails are used by 87% of prospects when they're learning about colleges, and only 1 percentage point behind is direct mail. Postcards and view books are also used quite prominently. Gil, did you have anything you wanted to mention there?
Yeah, I mean, what I think it's important here to really look at this also from the lens of a student who's doing their research, and I know James, you'll get into this in a couple of minutes, but it's important to realize that students are getting a lot of messages from a lot of schools. So you need to make sure that your message is resonating well and providing content that is something that's going to be impactful to the students, and that's really the focus. What we're going to talk about today is understanding that email and direct mail are impactful to students in their college search, particularly when they have a short list of schools that they're looking at. So how are you going to help your school get from number 5 to number 1? And hopefully we can help you with that a little bit today.
Excellent. Again, 98% of prospective students learn about colleges and universities primarily and first and foremost by direct marketing. So we wanted to conduct an experiment. Again, the use of these various channels has been widely publicized recently, but that doesn't really answer the question, what makes one email great and another email a total bomb? What makes one postcard compelling and what gets another thrown in the recycle bin? So we wanted to conduct an experiment, Chegg and TWG Plus, to figure out what were those components that would make specific communication pieces more effective than others. So we surveyed 1,000 students, or prospective students, and 2/3 of them were female, and that's roughly approximate to the percentage breakdown of actual college students these days. I think it's more like 60-40. Again, about 80% were under 18, and an additional 18% were between 18 and 24. So primarily, we were hitting the traditional college age population. 70% of those surveyed had not decided on which school they were going to attend yet. And of those who had decided on a college, 31% of those selected a national university. And that comes from the Carnegie classification of schools. One of the things that was really important about this study is that we developed creative materials from scratch that were not attributable to a real institution. We were concerned that if we were sending specific or communications from specific schools, that the survey respondents would be swayed by which school it was coming from. So we created kind of generic school-based communications to test the various components.
And
Um,
James, just to chime in here for a second, that your comment about creating them from scratch was not an intentional pun with the cookbook theme, right? That just came off the cuff.
oh man, I didn't even, wow. That did totally off the cuff. So as you're about to see in an email, the two most important pieces were to address the student personally and also to use their personal email address as opposed to one that would be issued by the institution. So this was what a survey taker saw. Next to where it says "Dear," the actual student's first name appeared. So this survey was in fact personalized to the survey taker. Um, Over 53% of the respondents were somewhat or very comfortable with being addressed personally, and an additional 30% were neutral. So this data suggests that the email should clearly be personalized.
Yeah, and I mean, a thought here is, normally in many respondents, you have that kind of normal bell-shaped curve where you have the peak in the middle, and then it kind of trails off to both sides. The important thing to think about here is that, we're dealing with this is a very positive trended chart, where it shows that, I mean, and this is honestly not groundbreaking rocket science material at this point right here, but students like personal information. They like the information to be personalized, and I would even argue that 30% in the middle is kind of the nature of the hipster uncommittal high school student demographic, where the reality is they probably still prefer to be addressed personally than general mass market messaging.
Definitely. And as you can see, more than 7 in 10 survey respondents would prefer to use their personal email address when corresponding with schools versus one that would be assigned to them by the school. So that's fairly uh, clear data there. And we don't know if this particular girl is one of those, but she looks like
She looks like someone that prefers to use her own email address.
absolutely. Next, we wanted to test various calls to action of pieces. So when we did that, there are various calls to action that we're going to show you in just a moment, but some recommendations for recipes on those call to action are to liberally pour in links to websites and social channels. Again, what a lot of students are looking for in direct mail are that conduit to get them to the school's website and the school's social channels. So this study by no means minimizes the importance of digital. It just kind of provides more of a roadmap for what channel might link to the next channel.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
just to piggyback on that for a moment, James, I think it's important to remember and remind that, as part of other research that we do specifically with social media, is 2/3 of students indicate that social media has an impact on their decision of where they ultimately enroll, and that's a pretty significant number of students who are going to college. As you mentioned, incorporating social into your traditional channels is a pretty strong strategy, because it's going to just further engage that student further down your funnel. You're not going to cultivate a lot of new inquiries via Facebook or Twitter, but you're going to, those are great opportunities to engage those interested students in a positive way.
right. So as we're about to see, landing pages were a popular call to action, as were personalized URLs. Some students were receptive to being offered free guides. One thing not to add are QR codes based on our data. As we're about to see, more than 50% of students responded that they would be very unlikely to scan a QR code. Similarly, students do not want to fill out lengthy forms. They don't want to join mailing lists. If you are utilizing forms in your communications, we highly recommend that you try and remove any form fields that would contain information that you probably already had in order to reach that student in the first place. So here in the top right of the slide is an example of one of the communications that the survey takers saw, and this one is the scan the QR code to schedule a visit. All of the communications were designed exactly the same. It was only the specific call to action in the middle there that changed, and the other ones also didn't have a QR code. But here we can see that more than 50% responded they would be very unlikely to scan those QR codes. This guy is a pretty, easygoing looking guy, but we're pretty sure he doesn't like QR codes. Here is a landing page URL. Again, students were voted that landing pages would be the action that they would most prefer out of the 4 calls to action that were tested. To test some additional calls to action, we created some postcards, and the text there in the orange in the center that's bold was the variable information there. So some of the options were to join a mailing list, to go online to receive more information, sign up to receive a free guide, visit us online, or confirm your information, which would lead to a form. And what we found was that 40% of the respondents preferred the option to visit us online. Just under a third were receptive to receiving a free guide. And again, confirming information and mailing lists, anything to do with forms, were extremely unpopular.
Yeah, and I think that's important to reiterate that point that, I mean, students probably don't want to join your list because they're getting a mail or email from you. So why would that, from a student perspective, why would they want to join a list that they are already on? You know, the behavior would be, I mean, it's similar to when, you know, you buy a list from a test service and send out a mailing to all of the students on your list, regardless of if you're in your database or not, and then measure response rate. I mean, willing to bet that many of the students that are already in your database or are requesting information from you on, you know, third-party college search websites, et cetera, are not going to return or want to confirm their information because they're going to feel like they already have.
Definitely. So we asked the respondents in an open-ended format why they chose the options that they selected, and also why they did not select the ones which they didn't choose. And here is a fairly representative comment. This particular girl does not want to be on a mailing list. You know, these students, they really want to do things on their own time. They want to go online on their own terms and look things up. They're very proficient information gatherers. They don't need to be spoon-fed everything by us. They're fairly competent. So the other thing is we have to pay attention to semantics, and we have to really understand terminology that is appropriate and appealing for a 17-year-old versus things that, you know, people my age say. So, for example, the word visit sounded welcoming to this particular prospect. Some people liked the free guides, but other people felt insulted by that word free, feeling like, why should they have to pay for a guide? Um, the specific word confirm sounded a little bit pushy, and my guess is probably a little bit adult to some of these prospects. So again, just paying attention to the way that these students talk is very important.
And I think one difference, a different word might be update. So instead of confirm your information, maybe update your information might be a stronger call to action. Because you know we want to make sure we have the most up to date information about you, and the info might be out of date. So we're asking them to, you know, make sure that that information is updated as opposed to confirmed. I think it may be just a different play on words to maybe think about.
Certainly. And you know, obviously there's variability in all of these responses. So even though some people were insulted by free guides, other people, you know, love to receive anything that's free and felt like that was personalized treatment. So obviously all of these actions have to be tested. Different demographics and different schools, populations are going to respond differently. Obviously, you know, good direct marketing entails testing. So while these results are certainly good guidelines, they should never be accepted writ large for everybody. Those things have to be sort of tested. Um, Next, we wanted to look at messaging. And we looked at messaging in terms of copy as well as images. Now, we know from a lot of recent research what the main drivers of the college choice process are. So, topics like academic strength and reputation and ranking, availability of specific programs of interest, availability of scholarships and financial aid, location, student life and clubs, athletics, these, campus safety. There's, these drivers are very well understood. But this is where the study got interesting because students wanted to have these messages conveyed differently in copy versus in image. And this is actually fine because all of our communications are going to combine text and images. But we wanted students to rank order uh, how they would want to read about information. So basically, what if you were to receive a letter from a school that contained a paragraph on each of the college drivers? What do you want to see, lead? What's most important? And so we're gonna go through that now. So academics and a personalized education rank number one as far as the copy with which a prospect would want to see a letter or postcard or email highlighting first. So this was the actual paragraph that students saw, talking about small class sizes and a faculty that knows students by name, just that word, personalized support and attention. And then there's some information about the number of majors and minors to choose from. That was ranked first out of the six. Second, no surprise, students and of course their parents are concerned about the financial attributes of going to college. So I think we can all agree that for many schools that tuition is maybe at a tipping point, and scholarships and financial aid, work study, these things are extremely important in order to justify the investment. Outcomes, this is the other end of what is, I think, largely associated with the financial. And, in determining whether or not going to college or any specific college is worth the investment, we want to know, what happens on the other end. Are the students getting jobs? Are they getting into graduate schools? Campus life, of course, academics is very important, but athletics are also important. Performing arts, opportunities for service learning, being able to get engaged in political and social issues, clubs, publications. That is obviously very important to students as well. Location and culture, and of course, location is always a little bit of a blessing and a curse. Some kids want to be very close to home, and therefore proximity to the school is a benefit. Other kids want to get as far away from their parents as possible, and therefore that proximity can become an albatross. So, and then, obviously there are different preferences for beaches versus mountains or rural versus city, but uh, highlighting that location and the culture of that location is very important. And athletics, even though that was a little bit subsumed by the last one, oftentimes that is spelled out, particularly at certain types of institutions. Again, even though that was ranked sixth, it is very important to some. And one really important thing to remember is that all six of those attributes scored a significant number of total points, even though the rank order um, presented itself in the way it did. That by no means suggests that any of that information is unimportant. It's really a question of what do prospects want to see highlighted first and foremost in copy.
Yeah, and I mean, just to drive that point home a little bit, it's important to look at that of what we were asking students to think about, and that's the copy that they're reading is the heavier the information that's more informative, quote unquote, is the stuff that they would rather read more copy of. Financial aid information, information about outcomes and academics are things that copy probably lends itself to explaining better. Whereas visual content, we'll get into this in a little bit, visual things like athletics or campus life, those are things that you can actually show better with pictures. So it's important. I mean, the top three drivers of what students want to actually read the information of are the things that are the most kind of copy driven things anyway. So that kind of works.
Right. So testing the visual messages, we presented the survey takers with different types of images that were um, that categorically corresponded to the same rankings that we just showed you. So they corresponded to academics, they corresponded to campus life, to financial aid and scholarship information outcomes. And what we found was that overwhelmingly respondents wanted to see images of students collaborating with their peers and faculty in a location that was clearly the campus of the school. And we're going to show you some open-ended responses in a few minutes that really kind of speak to the importance of making it clear that it's your campus being visualized, not just the generic shot of kids reading under what could be any tree on any quad. Um, so we're going to show you some of those. Again, just about half the respondents, they were asked to look at a set of images that again were associated with those categories, and then to select the one that was the most compelling. So in other words, if they were to receive a communication from a college that could only include one of those sets, which one would it be? And again, it was overwhelmingly people engaged on campus. And I'm just going to pull up a few quotes here. So, again, we're in the selfie generation, right? We're in an age when people are making, purchasing decisions that are based on, how it makes them feel, and they want products and services that are tailored to them. And we're finding that higher education is no different these days. So when the students want to, they want to be able to visualize what their life would be like on a campus, which they might be, walking on across the grass for the next 4 years. And here we see some of those quotes. The picture, and they're referring to the one that showed people on campus, shows me how comfortable I would be while attending the campus. College can be intimidating, so I guess you could say that it is almost easing that fear a bit. That second quote, I chose that picture because it would show me how life would be on campus, and I would get a small view of what I would be surrounded by every day. So that just really highlights the fact, again, in images, you want to show people collaborating and participating in various types of events, be that academics or athletics, but make it clear that it's on your campus. So in conclusion, and again, that picture makes me very hungry. Direct marketing is still the primary way by which prospective students are learning about colleges and universities. In your direct mail communications, they should provide clear and direct links to school websites in the calls to action. Again, the website is a very, very important piece of this process. It's just not always the first channel that people are going to, but in all of your communications, you should always be routing people to your websites and social channels. Same thing with landing pages. Very important to have inviting and nicely constructed landing pages. So again, email is obviously going to be a necessary introduction to a school, but just remember, try not to make these prospects fill out cumbersome forms and ask them if they want to be on mailing lists. They really look at these communication pieces as enablers that will get them to your websites and social channels so that they can continue to explore on their own terms and on their own time. These students want a personalized college experience, and these direct mail pieces are really the introductions to help them make those decisions. So, it just we can't, it's so important that these introductory communications be compelling. And when you're addressing the students, use their names, use their personal email addresses. In terms of copy, again, we want to lead with information that focuses on academic offerings and strengths, as well as that personalized experience that a prospect will receive. But in terms of images, make sure that you are capturing engagement with peers and faculty, but doing it in a way that shows that it is clearly occurring on your campus. These prospects want to see their potential future surroundings. So the nice thing here is that, of course, all of these communications incorporate copy and text, or I'm sorry, copy and images. So it gives us an opportunity to cover what we know those college choice drivers to be utilizing those different mediums. So again, we can cover academics and financial aid and maybe outcomes in the copy, and campus life, which seems to be very popular. We can really capture that in terms of our images. So the multimedia format of these communications enable us to cover all that important information that prospects are looking for. So what's next for us? We felt that this study was really the first in the higher ed marketing literature that took a deep dive into what specific components of communications are compelling. Um, it was very important for us to take it a step further than, well, we know email is important, we know mail is important. This was really a first step to try and understand what makes a good email, what makes a disastrous letter. Next, we want to look at specific components and calls to action that would be utilized on institutional websites and social channels, as well as landing pages. So we know that the digital channels are, at the very least, a very important next step. So we want to do the same thing that we did in this study. We want to create materials and test them. What calls to action work well on landing pages, what messages and images work well on web pages. So that would be probably where we're going to go next with this. And again, just to reinforce who we are, this was a collaborative study between TWG Plus and Chegg, and both of us work in the marketing capacity with higher education institutions in different capacities. And with that, I will turn it back over to Gil. And Gil, do you have anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I mean, thank you, James, for your insights and your lead on kind of crunching the numbers and pulling out some interesting findings. I'll take this time to kind of turn it over to our attendees to see if they have any questions. Um, Once again, the questions box will be on the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToWebinar toolbar. I'll be happy to field any of those and ask James for his insights on any as well. So go ahead and start typing those, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you. So one of the first questions is from Michael, and he asks, will we be making the slide deck available to attendees? The answer is yes. We're actually also recording this webinar. So we're going to send a recording, the slide deck, as well as the full white paper with all of the findings to all webinar attendees after the presentation concludes today. So we'll be happy to send those out, and we welcome your feedback. We would love to know what else we would like to cover, what information you'd like us to dig deeper on, so we can improve this study in future iterations. The next question is from Steve. Steve asked, did you mention how large the sample set was for the students? The sample was 1,000 students who are all active users of Chegg for our student resources. So students from, and I see James is going to scroll back to the demographic slide to give us the full study breakdown. But these were all students who used Chegg for either textbook rental, homework help, or selection of courses, or use Zinch.com for their college search and scholarship search. So we tap into those databases to get student perspectives on the various tools. So you can see the breakdown there. Any other deeper information on the demographics you'd like to cover, James?
No, that's a good synopsis right there on screen, really.
Okay.
An additional note that actually wasn't here was that we had students from 37 of the 50 states represented in the survey as well.
Great.
So we felt pretty good about the national coverage.
We have a question from Dennis, who asks, would the QR code be more viable if it linked to a short 30-second video of the college campus rather than another landing page to collect information? I mean, my personal thought on QR codes is that if you have to explain what it is and what it does, it loses a little bit of its value. And I mean, if there was a default QR code scanner built into the camera on an iPhone, that might change the tune on that a little bit. But right now, a student has to install an app to then view your QR code, and it just gets kind of clunky. And whatever the path of least resistance is, I feel like students are going to follow. So my perspective is you can like make the landing page link to a page that has a campus video. And that is one thing we didn't necessarily go deep into is value of video content, what students want to see in video, which is something we can consider putting in future studies, because it's easy to say that students love visual content and they like videos, because we know that, and that's been confirmed by a number of studies. But what really makes a video pop would be something we would definitely think about doing in the future. Any thought on QR code implementation, James?
Sure. So, and again, obviously, Gil, you and I are sample size of two, so take this with a grain of salt, all of you out there. But I agree. I mean, I think that when we're sending materials, particularly in email, that any linkage that's necessary is right there with a mouse click. So, introducing an intermediate device, even though the technology is kind of cool, my gut tells me, and again, we maybe should have digged a little deeper on this particular question on the survey, which we really didn't. But I just think it's an extra step, and for people who want things, who want sort of that instant gratification, I think it sort of begs the question, why take that extra step if I can just click on a link?
Yeah,
Um,
and
so
I mean, I got an email from my alma mater inviting me to check out a video, and in the email was a picture of a QR code for me to scan. And my immediate thought was, why? What value does that have? Am I going to print the email and scan the QR code, or am I going to take the picture of the QR code on my computer? Or I mean, why wouldn't I just click the link to download or to go to view the video? And that to me was just a bizarre implementation. It's memorable. I remember getting the QR code, but that's just it's again, yeah, the extra step or having to explain the technology or not fully understanding the technology is something that would get in the way, I think.
yeah, I mean, I think in general, sort of writ large when it comes to communication practices, I always recommend, get people where you want them to go as fast as you can with the least amount of thinking and the least number of steps.
Yep.
You know,
And that's, I mean, to your point about not having fields for information you already have. I mean, the less fields you can ask them to complete, the higher your conversion is going to be of getting students to actually do that step. Let's see. Gabrielle asks, instead of asking them to join a mailing list, do you suggest just having the option prominent on website? My personal perspective on this is, I mean, that your website is definitely a marketing tool for prospective student recruitment first above all else. I was actually on Higher Ed Live earlier this week, and we talked about social media and student engagement, and when they get to your website, what do you want them to do? So when you think about your website, first I think is establish what the goal is of having your website, and if the goal is to collect student inquiries or collect student information, then yeah, having a call to action, click here to join our mailing list button is probably a good thing. But then think about how much information you actually need to have a student join your mailing list. I had a school that I worked with at one point that you click to join their mailing list, and they'd ask you basically everything that you would need to fill out the application to the school. When all you really need is that student's email address if you want them to sign up for a email newsletter, and then if you want to collect additional information over time, that's something to think about, incorporating into further communication. So being a little bit more systematic with your student information collection, I think, is more strategic than trying to have everything that they would possibly need for their application on your website. James, any thoughts there?
sure. We have to remember that these are students who are in their decision-making process. And, some of them might be intimately familiar with you. Some of them might have never heard of you before. So it's like, when you take, get on an airplane or whatever, lately I start to, every time I get off a plane, I get a survey now from Expedia or the airline, asking me how my flight was. And I love this new implementation where there's one where you just click on a smiley face or a frowny face, and that's it. And you can add, an open-ended response if you want to, but it's quick and easy. And when I see how quick and easy it is, it makes me want to do it. if I were to receive a survey after getting off a flight and it was 42 questions and they said it's going to take me 15 minutes, forget about it. There's no way I'm going to do that. So I think that the key is, again, making that the introductory communications and establishing the connection, make that as easy as possible, particularly at the beginning of the process when you really have no idea what level of commitment you're dealing with.
Great. We have a question from Al. Al asked two questions actually. First is, does the data vary at all by the parents of prospective students? Unfortunately, we didn't survey parents, so we don't have access to that info. I would venture to guess anecdotally that parents definitely would still prefer, print communication coming to the home from schools that the student has applied to. There's a big, they're kind of the barrier a lot of times between the student getting the information and not getting the information. I mean, I know of we do student focus groups all the time where we ask the parents of the students because they're there. Have you ever thrown out mail from schools that a student's not interested in? They go as far as throwing away mail from schools they don't want their student interested in. So I mean, engagement of parents is definitely a different beast. I don't speak to having any formal data on the matter, but I would say that parents definitely would prefer to be kept in the loop. So, including them on the email lists and including them in mailings. I mean, I've seen schools even do supplemental mailings to the parent or guardian of student and having
Mm-hmm.
things that are more guide oriented. So the college search and the parent's guide to college, that kind of stuff. And more of a brand building play with the parents so that they have a more positive affinity to your school is something that would be more beneficial than just continuing to send the same stuff that you'd send a student. James, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of the research that I conduct for colleges and universities does, in fact, survey prospective parents in addition to students. And I could probably, if you want to get a hold of me offline, I could probably go through some different studies with different schools and aggregate some data regarding, parent preferences and habits as it relates to receiving and responding to various communication channels and practices. So I would have to kind of dig through the data a little bit. I don't want to throw anything out there prematurely, but I can certainly provide some data that would help address that question. But I would. Why don't we? Was that Steve who asked that question?
Al.
Al. Okay, Al. If you want to get a hold of me, maybe offline, we could try and attack that question for you a bit.
And Al's second question was, do the preferences only increase proportionally with the student's enrollment stage, i.e. accepted, deposited, etc.? Chegg actually does another study similar to what James is talking about with parents. We do another study annually on trends in student perspectives of their college search. And we look at, what tools are most impactful at that general research phase versus their having applied and been admitted to schools and then ultimately deciding where to enroll. And we definitely do see really an increase in the value of direct mail at that applied and been admitted stage and ultimately the deciding where to enroll stage relative to the inquiry, the search phase, I guess is the best way to put it. And I mean, the reason we've deduced for that based on our focus groups and additional responses is that students, once they know your brand and are committed to it enough to apply and are trying to decide where to enroll, that's when their eyeballs are most widely opened to the information that they're receiving. So yeah, I would say that the findings here would apply further down the funnel with making information more visually appealing when you're talking about campus life versus maybe having more copy prevalent for or making at least the copy more prominent for information about academics and financial aid information, where that would be important to students at that phase of the process. And I think that's definitely something to think about later in the recruitment process, as well as at the search phase. Steve asks, was there any discussion among those surveyed regarding the chances of them sending back a piece of mail to a college?
I did not see any student make reference to the fact that they would ever send anything back, but that would be quite something.
Yeah, I mean, I remember again working at a school where we had that type of a mailer where it was the the trifold general info about the school search piece with the tear off and send this back postcard. And it was funny because the tear off send this back postcard was pre-populated with all the students' information, and then we're asking them to send it back as a form of response. Where I mean, and we would get some back, but I feel like that was declining year over year. I think the recommendation to drive them to online channels is behavior that they're doing anyway. So why not encourage them to go to a channel specific that you want them to go to specifically? So I mean, if you have the ability to have a piece and you have the postage budget and everything else to do that, I guess won't technically hurt, but I don't see it helping as much as driving them to online channels and to try to get them to interact with you in a more creative way would be my just in my experience my recommendation.
Thanks for addressing that, Guy. I'm sorry. I think I misunderstood the meaning of that question, so I apologize for
That's
my
okay.
response. That
Um, Joni asks, you mentioned earlier the differences in a quote unquote good letter and a quote unquote bad letter. Do you happen to have an example of each? Well, I personally don't want to put any schools on blast. There's that was part of the benefit of using the faux university in all of these examples that students saw. Is we didn't use a specific brand because we felt like that would have impacted response rates. There's the regardless of if it's a good piece, quote unquote good piece or quote unquote bad piece, Yale is going to get a different response than Wichita Community College. And that's not to say that one school or one program is better for an individual student than the other. It's just that there's a more positive affinity to one brand over the other. As far as specific pieces, I mean, I can again we can you can speak tactically what's I've seen schools do. I mean, the postcard piece that is one of them, making that the only channel for the student to be able to reply would not be something I would recommend doing. Um, the good examples would be again the taking visual content, making it most visible, especially on campus life, things that students can use to envision themselves on the campus. That's what they want to do. And providing them with an avenue to connect with you on a variety of channels, whether it be social, whether it be a personalized landing page. Those are the types of things that are going to work well. But I mean, I can't provide specific examples, especially since this webinar is being recorded.
so again the study goal was really an attempt to remove to control for the effect of the brand power or lack of brand power of a specific school. So what we're suggesting, and we know that in reality, that doesn't really happen as much, but in as much as we can control for that, what we're suggesting is that by following the recipes that we've laid out here, we would we would think that you would have the highest chance of success in any given communication piece.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. It looks like we answered most or all of the questions. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send them our way. We're going to send out the white paper with the PowerPoint slides and the recording shortly after the end of the presentation today, so you'll be able to have that to share with your colleagues and friends. Great, reading at parties and all of that. So it's something to hopefully provide some good conversation for your team. Um, Again, if you have any questions or thoughts, please send them our way. We'll send you all of our contact information after the webinar, or use the Twitter stream hashtag Cookbook. We had some pretty good activity there during the presentation. Feel free to use that hashtag to continue the conversation as well. James, thanks again so much for your insights. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Gil, and thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate your time, and definitely feel free to reach out to me individually if you have any specific questions, like Al or anybody else. Thanks again.